Good evening. The news and sport from ITN. Tonight's headlines. The Northern Ireland Secretary seeks to reassure Unionists over peace deal. Siberian air crash claims 120 dead in one of Russia's worst plane disasters.
And tonight's main sports headline, Mark Steen continues Chelsea's New Year revival as the weather plays havoc elsewhere.
London and Dublin took steps to keep the Downing Street Peace Declaration on track today. Unionist fears were raised when the Irish Prime Minister Albert Reynolds called for a start to the de-militarization of Northern Ireland. The Northern Ireland Secretary, Sir Patrick Mayhew, responded by assuring Unionists that Britain won't try to persuade anyone to join a united Ireland. But tonight, Sinn Féin's President Gerry Adams said peace depended on the British government ultimately removing guarantees to the Unionists.
Tonight, the president of Sinn Féin, Gerry Adams, has issued a more positive response to the Downing Street Declaration. In a speech, he said the British government had acknowledged for the first time the right of the Irish people to national self-determination. It was, he said, a potentially significant development. Earlier, the Irish Prime Minister issued a statement offering Republicans some clarification of the Downing Street Declaration. On the key question of self-determination, he suggests the IRA has got what it wants. But it also wants the British government to join the ranks of the persuaders, persuading Unionists to join a united Ireland. Mr. Reynolds clarifies that the British will persuade the parties to reach agreement, but won't take sides. He also adds that it is time to start a process of demilitarization. This has caused controversy because demilitarization is a term used almost exclusively by the IRA to imply a gradual scaling down of military force on both sides. The Secretary of State, Sir Patrick Mayhew, responded by repeating the army was on the streets as a response to paramilitary violence and would react imaginatively if that violence ended. But Mr. Reynolds' remarks had already unsettled Unionists.
Now Mr. Reynolds is using language which he knows must be designed to be attractive to Republicans and to suggest something going further than the Downing Street Declaration. It gives me the impression that there's an element of desperation by Reynolds in an attempt to make his promises come true.
Mr. Reynolds' carefully chosen words appear designed to influence the debate within the IRA. As Republicans try to assess this declaration, he is clearly arguing that it gives them much of what they want. But inevitably it puts strains on the peace process because in moving to reassure Republicans, he has unsettled Unionists. Tom Bradby, ITN in Belfast.
A Russian airliner has crashed in Siberia, killing all 120 people on board. It's the second air disaster in the former Soviet Union in 8 days, raising fears of falling safety standards. The jet came down near Irkutsk minutes after it had taken off for Moscow on a routine flight.
For the third time in a decade, a Tupolev 154 airliner, identical to this one, crashes in Russia, raising serious concerns about the safety standard of the aircraft. It is the workhorse of the Russian fleet, despite being introduced into service over 20 years ago. In this latest disaster, the plane had only been airborne 12 minutes when the pilots radioed an engine was on fire and they were losing control. Within minutes, the aircraft disappeared from radar screens. 18 months ago, 82 passengers were killed when their Tu-154 crashed near Moscow. Another disaster from the aging fleet, which, say experts, is not subjected to the same maintenance standards required in the West.
Operators try to continue to fly older aircraft because they do not have money to buy something new to replace them.
This film, taken before today's disaster, shows the area near Irkutsk, where wreckage is strewn over a 2-mile radius. Any survivors of the crash would have quickly perished in Siberian temperatures of minus 20 degrees centigrade. Investigators will want to piece together all of the wreckage before confirming that engine failure was the cause of the crash. But to do that, they may have to wait until the end of Siberia's long, hard winter, as much of the evidence is hidden in the deep snow. Adrian Britton, ITN, Moscow.
The Environment Minister, Tim Yeo, has tonight been summoned to explain himself to his constituency association as pressure grows for him to resign. It follows revelations that he had a child from an extramarital affair. Earlier, in a letter to The Times, the director of the Conservative Family Institute, Dr. Adrian Rogers, said, "Immoral politicians, in my view, exhibit hypocrisy and dishonesty and are potentially untrustworthy." The Archbishop of Canterbury today described Sudan's decision to expel the British ambassador as completely over the top. It comes ahead of tomorrow's deadline set by Britain for Sudan to reverse its decision. Dr. George Carey, in Nairobi after his visit to rebel-held southern Sudan, described the tour as the longest 4 days of my life. In Mexico, dozens of people have been killed in fierce gun battles as government forces put down an armed uprising by Indian peasants. Tonight, the rebels still hold several towns in the southern province of Chiapas, and the government has warned the death toll could rise still higher. Glenn O'Glaser reports from the United States.
After heavy fighting, the Mexican army has recaptured the town of San Cristobal de las Casas, but heavy fighting continues in 4 others. Dozens of rebels, soldiers and policemen have been killed and wounded. The rebels, indigenous Indians, are members of a previously unknown group named after Mexico's national hero, Emiliano Zapata. Armed with guns and machetes, they burnt government buildings, and there are reports of widespread looting. They also broke into a prison and released nearly 200 prisoners and have taken a former state governor hostage. The rebels say they're being driven from their land and claim they're fighting a government policy of genocide and economic domination by the United States. The church has offered to mediate a ceasefire. The Mexican government says it's using minimum force to restore order. Glenn O'Glaser, ITN in Washington.
Now here's Graham Miller with today's sport.
Rain ruined Blackburn's hopes of gaining on Premiership leaders Manchester United today. Their game against Wimbledon was called off 5 minutes before kick-off. But it was even worse for struggling Manchester City. 2-0 up against Ipswich before their game was abandoned.
The pitch might have been a virtual lake, but the game looked like being a life raft for the success-starved Manchester City faithful. Kari Ingebrigtsen put them ahead after 4 minutes, and then with the ball refusing to obey Ipswich orders, Michel Vonk blasted in number 2. So when referee David Elleray called a halt after 39 minutes, City frustrations erupted. Goalkeeper Tony Coton was among many players who had to be restrained. He later apologised.
We're all frustrated because the game's called off.
Meanwhile, City's manager Brian Horton was left to explain to the dumbstruck fans who must be wondering what can happen next. But the new year seems to have transformed Chelsea's fortunes. Craig Burley's 25-yard rocket put them ahead against Everton, and they were 2-0 up at half-time before Tony Cottee scored Everton's first goal in over 10 hours of football. Everton then equalised, but Chelsea weren't to be denied. Mark Steen's second and Chelsea's fourth made sure of their third win out of 3 since Christmas.
So Manchester United, who play Liverpool tomorrow at Anfield, remain 12 points clear at the top. Queen's Park Rangers did them a favour, holding third-placed Arsenal to a goalless draw. Sheffield Wednesday beat Spurs to take their holiday haul to 10 points out of 12. They climb to 6th place. In the First Division, Marco Gabbiadini thrashed Tranmere's hopes of going top. The Derby striker grabbed a hat-trick to take his tally to 5 in 3 games and make it a miserable day for the Merseysiders. But Alan Pardew allowed Charlton to take full advantage of their slip-up, his goal helping keep the Londoners in the hunt. And Scott Gemmell scored the winner for Forest to stretch their unbeaten run to 12 games. So Palace still top by a point with 2 games in hand. Charlton climbed to 3rd, Southend lost at Notts County, and there's Forest in the frame in 7th place. And the weather's already taken its toll of tomorrow's top game in Scotland. Motherwell against Celtic is off. The Fir Park pitch is frozen solid. The winning ways of the England A cricketers in South Africa seem to be over. After 8 wins in a row, they're heading for defeat against Natal. Forced to follow on, they finished the day on 183 for 3, still 159 behind Natal's massive first innings total.
And that's it from us. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Hello, good evening. Heavy rain that arrived in Cornwall this morning is sitting across Scotland now. Tomorrow should be a better day for most of us, but still with a fair number of showers around. There's still a lot of rain around at the moment, though, through the rest of this evening and overnight, especially up over Scotland, where it's turning to sleet and snow up on the high ground. So quite a miserable night there, even some localised flooding. Further south, there are clearer spells in the clouds, so I think you find temperatures falling quite low, but a lot of showers still whistling in on those fresh southwest winds. Watch out for one or two icy patches in the northern half of Britain tonight. Tomorrow, a mixture of sunshine and showers, longer spells of rain, sleet, even snow up in the far north. For the rest of Britain, it is a mixture of sunny spells and showers, and hopefully fewer showers during the afternoon, with many places becoming dry and fairly bright. Top temperatures only 7. Now, if you grit your teeth, we'll have a look further ahead to the rest of this week. The chart for midweek, Wednesday night, Thursday morning, looks very unsettled indeed. As you can see, lots of low pressure and lots of frontal systems too. In real weather, that means lots of rain, I'm afraid. Some showers too, especially in the south. The further north you are, the more likely you are to see sleet and even snow. It's a very unsettled picture. Lots of rain. Here's a summary.